Is this YouTube? What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another video. Oh my goodness, has it been a while since your guy Jackstown uploaded. Guys, this hiatus caused by me has gone on for way too long. Been caught up with a handful of different things in life, specifically getting my personal training license at the gym that I work at. That took up some time online, a lot of computer work, a lot of online self-studying, and kind of that led to another thing, and then things happen, and then you kind of, next thing you know, you don't upload for 10 months, but no excuses for that. It's great to be back, and we are no longer going to continue with this long break. I always love making content for you wonderful people watching out there, so this is coming to an end. This hiatus is over. We are back on the channel making sports content and all other content we can think of for you wonderful viewers of the Jackstown channel. We are officially back with a banger, I think, of a video. We got some NBA content for you. The old NBA. I know it's the off season, but I felt like it would be a good time to talk about what has gone down in the NBA off season. A lot of teams have made a lot of moves. We're near mid-July, which means a lot of teams have already changed their outlook and picture going forward for next season. So I got the idea of kind of assessing what all these NBA teams have done. Some teams have made some questionable moves, and some teams have made some really good moves, so it gave me the idea to kind of rank them, kind of think of some of the best off seasons for some of these teams pushing toward next year. The NBA season is still a few months away, but I definitely think it's worth talking about which NBA teams have had the best off season so far. So because of that, I have created a little top 5 list of what I think are the 5 best off seasons for these NBA teams. Essentially the top 5 NBA teams with the best off seasons so far. Which of these NBA teams do I feel like have upgraded the most, upgraded the best? And I created this list for you. Obviously, this is completely my subjective Jackstonius opinion, so definitely make sure to comment your opinions. As always, I'd love to hear who you think has had some of the best off seasons among the 30 NBA teams. But with that being said, guys, here's the little PowerPoint presentation I created for you to count down the top 5 NBA teams with the best off seasons so far. Now, this is gonna be tough. A lot of teams have had good off seasons, but some of the teams just stood out a little bit extra to me. So let's get right into it, guys. At number 5, the team that I think has had the 5th best offseason. A little bit surprising, a little bit controversial, I think. But we're going to start with the Phoenix Suns. Now, the team in the Valley has kind of been a disaster the last couple years, especially in the whole Big 3 KD, Book, Bradley Beal era. So the Suns, let's just call it what it is. They were kind of a mess, right? Going into this offseason, there was a lot they needed to do, I think, to turn things around. Give Suns fans hope that this team is at least 1% as good as the team that took us to the finals and was up 2-0 on the Bucks. Sorry, Suns fan, I don't mean to remind you, I do like the Suns. But yes, I do think the Suns have had a really good offseason, even though some people don't think so. Some people think trading KD, like, what are you doing? You're trading KD, you're giving away arguably your best player. That's a good offseason, but the way I see it is that current structure of the Suns team was not going to win how it was constructed. I think the team with KD, Bradley Beal, Devin Booker clearly did not work out, so that was assumed to me that the Suns were going to move on and trade KD. The rumors were loud and heavy, and that's exactly what happened. They obviously traded KD, but let's take a look at some of the key additions they got back in that KD trade from the Rockets. First of all, I love the addition of Jalen Green. I think the Suns needed some young star power, some young, talented players to build forward and look forward to the future with. Jalen Green, 23 years old. I know he was streaky. I know he struggled in the playoffs in that series against Golden State, and I really think that's what caused the Rockets to essentially end the experiment with Jalen Green. But at the end of the day, you're talking about a guy who can easily average 20 points per game, as he's done for a few seasons now, and this is a guy that you can build your team around, and just a nice breath of fresh air for a Suns franchise that did not have a lot of building blocks of players 25 and under. So the rebuild is kind of happening for the Suns, at least a retooling. A lot needed to change. You start that with Jalen Green. I like it a lot. And then another move, getting Dillon Brooks in that same trade from the Rockets, I think was important because the Suns had kind of developed this identity the last couple years of being a little bit of a softer team, not really a tough team physically or otherwise, emotionally, mentally, right? And you get the ultimate competitor, tough guy, get under your skin guy in Dillon Brooks. So I think that's a really good addition to a Suns team that really needs to improve their defense, but also their toughness and add that to their identity. So I really like the addition of Dillon Brooks. The Suns lacked some good big guys. They go and trade for Mark Williams as well, a really talented young center, obviously from the Hornets, that my Lakers should have gotten, but failed the physical, obviously. So here we are. Mark Williams is a Phoenix Sun, another good building block for them. I think he's a really good big guy when healthy, so I really like that addition to the Suns. I like Mark Williams on the Suns. Speaking of talented young big guys, the Suns in the trade from the Rockets also get the 10th pick. They drafted Kaman Malawak, the young center from Duke, who's 7'2", long arms, super talented. They get him in the draft. They get him in the first round, 10th overall, and I think he's a guy that they can build with as well. So you kind of get three guys that are young and can really be a big part of your future, as well as a tough guy in Dillon Brooks, even though the departures of KD, Tyus Jones, and my guy Plum Dog Millionaire, Mason Plumlee, are not ideal. You know, you lose a really good backup point guard in Tyus Jones, you lose a very solid center in Mason Plumlee, but that's okay. For the centers, you're trying to build toward the future. Tyus Jones, you know, he's a really good player, but I think he's more of a guy who should be on a contender right now. So I'm okay with it. And KD, that experiment I feel like had to come to an end. So the Suns, I think for the future, have had a top 5 offseason, which brings us to number 4, the Orlando Magic. Now we can keep this one pretty simple because the Magic, in an Eastern Conference that's pretty wide open now with the injuries to Jason Tatum, Tyrese Halliburton, and Damian Lillard. Obviously, the Bucks waived him for some reason. I don't know. The East is pretty wide open, right? So the Magic, I love that they were a fringe contender the last year or two. Not really a contender playoff team, thinking they're close to a contender. But this is the type of move that kind of puts you forward in that wide open Eastern Conference. They go get Desmond Bane from the Memphis Grizzlies, a terrific shooter, all around a really good scorer who could easily average 20 points a game for you. Just kind of like a borderline star level player, honestly, that I think the Magic could really use. I think that's something they lacked because we remember from the playoffs last year, guys, the Magic really struggled to shoot the 3 ball. And Desmond Bane does the exact opposite of that. He shoots at a 40% clip and above consistently, and you go get a really good fortified scorer and shooter like him in that trade that they made a few weeks back. And here we are, the Magic in a wide open Eastern Conference with a move like this look like contenders. A sleeper dark horse contender? Sure, but in my opinion, they're a contender at this point in that Eastern Conference. And they add Tyus Jones, which is, like I said, with the loss of Tyus Jones to the Phoenix Suns, he's a great backup point guard on a contending team. So you really just get that consistency. You get that, just, you know what you're going to get from Tyus Jones. Efficiency, a lot of assists for the lack of turnovers he has, right? Great assists, historically great assist to turnover ratio. So I love the addition of Tyus Jones. And they drafted Jace Richardson, the son of Jason Richardson, in the first round. And he's a bucket. He was a bucket at Michigan State, just like his dad. I think that's going to be a great addition to the team. I'm not sure how many minutes he'll get, obviously, but I feel like he can be a solid addition to the team if he's part of the rotation and help their scoring, because they were a defensive-minded team last year and they did struggle on offense at times. So it's important to add to that. They get Jace Richardson, a really good guard who can shoot threes, who can just score all around, kind of a combo guard, but just a great addition to the team. Unfortunately, their key departures were Cole Anthony, which, you know, you talk about a talented first-round pick like Cole Anthony, a big guard. But at the end of the day, the Magic did have a handful of guards they wanted to build around, and it just didn't seem like Cole Anthony fit into what they were trying to do. I feel like for them trying to go for it, it was better to get a more fortified backup point guard than kind of try to make Cole Anthony their backup point guard or kind of their second or third point guard. So I think that departure is something, but it's not a huge thing in my opinion. I just don't feel like he fit the puzzle of the Magic that well. And they did lose KCP, who's a 2-time champ, really good 3-and-D guy, obviously, but he did really struggle last year. He shot, I think, the worst three-point percentage of his career. So you kind of replace him with a better player, let's be honest, in Desmond Bane. So it's not too bad of a loss. It is an upgrade to have Desmond Bane now over KCP. And they also did lose Gary Harris. You know, he did play a good amount. He's a veteran, been around a while. He can shoot threes, he can score, but not a significant loss. I really like the Magic's key additions over their key departures, which is why they're number 4, which brings us to number 3, the Houston Rockets, another pretty obvious candidate for this list. And why? Because they go and get a future Hall of Famer, one of the top 15 players of all time, maybe top 12, top 10 maybe, in KD. They trade for KD, get exactly what they needed. The Rockets, like the Magic, a very defensive team, right? Defensive-minded team that struggled to score in the playoffs. And that's probably the reason why they didn't advance past the first round. They go get a closer. They go get an all-around 3-level Hall of Fame scorer in Kevin Durant. That's exactly what they needed, in my opinion. And they fortified their bigs with Clint Capella coming back to the Rockets after all those years he spent there in the James Harden era. And they go get a 3-and-D forward in Dorian Finney-Smith. So just to kind of fortify the defensive structure and the really good coaching they have, the system they have can easily fit these guys into what they're doing. You get 3 guys who can all defend as well as 2 of them score. Clint Capella can score, but not off lobs, right, and tip backs, but you just get 3 guys that are really helping what the Rockets want to do, and that's obviously to contend. The Rockets probably believe that they're one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the Western Conference, and maybe they will be after this move. Obviously, a great move to get Kevin Durant added to the Rockets team, a young team that could also use a veteran presence like KD, and the departures are obviously Jalen Green and Dillon Brooks in that trade, which you talked about going to the Suns, but Jalen Green, maybe it was a little early to trade him because he was one of your building blocks, but at the end of the day, if you want to get Kevin Durant, he's still extremely valuable, so it would cost something. They didn't have to depart they didn't have to get rid of Şengün, they didn't have to get rid of Van Vliet or Jabari Smith or a lot of their other young players, so I do like, it's not that big of a bundle they had to give up. They did have to give up some good players. So Jalen Green and Dillon Brooks go, but they bring in a few really good replacements. I believe Houston Rockets have upgraded and had a top 3 off season. Next, we move on to the Atlanta Hawks. Atlanta, they had a great offseason. They're the runner-up on my list, maybe surprisingly, but I love what they did. They needed a big guy that could stretch the floor, I think. They needed a big guy that could get you buckets, and they got Kristaps Porzingis in the trade from Boston. We all know his injury history. There is the risk of that with Porzingis. Lots of injuries throughout his career, but you still get an absolute bucket of a big guy, an extremely talented center that this Hawks team could really use. And since they have Onyeka Okongwu, they could stretch Porzingis, play him at the 4, and he could absolutely do that. I totally think he could play with Okongwu, so I like the addition of Porzingis a lot. And I also think the Hawks really lacked defense last year other than Dyson Daniels, right? They go get Nickeil Alexander-Walker, a playoff experienced 3-and-D guy. We all know from the Timberwolves the last couple years, really big, impactful player for a team like the Hawks, for any team really. So just a great addition to get Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and they fortified their shooting with a sniper in Luke Kennard. This guy could come off the bench, only play, 15, 20 minutes, but he could have a game where he makes 5 threes in those. He goes 5 for 7 from 3 in those 15 to 20 minutes. So just a great offensive addition, get that shooting help with Luke Kennard. Now, there were a handful of departures, but to me, none of them devastating, none of them extremely significant. Like, Clint Capella, Karis LeVert, Larry Nance, Terrence Mann, George Niang. These are all really good players, but you have your big guys, right? You don't really need Clint Capella. You kind of have a younger version of him in Onyeka Okongwu. Karis LeVert is a really good player, but he is kind of a one-on-one player. In the structure of the team the Hawks have with Trae Young, I think distributing the ball, wanting to play a quicker style offense with a lot of the younger players they have, I don't really mind the move to get rid of Karis LeVert. And then Larry Nance, Terrence Mann, George Niang. These are all important rotation players, but at the end of the day, you look at the Hawks starting 5, potentially with Trae Young, Dyson Daniels, Jalen Johnson's going to come back. We'll see if Nickeil Alexander-Walker will be a starter. If not, Porzingis, Okongwu. And again, in that wide open Eastern Conference, the Hawks may have a chance here to be a dark horse contender as well, after not even making the play-in last year, right? So the Hawks, I think, have gotten way better with the moves they made. So it's just an extreme upgrade for them. And out of nowhere, they could be dark horse contenders. So they're my runner-up spot. Who had the best offseason, in my opinion? Who had the best? Who made the moves that were the most significant, that make them a contender? I believe the best offseason thus far goes to the Denver Nuggets. The Denver Nuggets have the best player in basketball. They have Nikola Jokic, but just with him, they go to Game 7 with the champs, the OKC Thunder, obviously. but that team was shallow. They did not have the depth that they wanted, not even close to the depth they had when they won the title 2 years ago. And what do they do this offseason? They go from a team that wasn't deep to looking like one of the deepest teams in the league. They trade Michael Porter Jr. for Cam Johnson. That's, you know, semi-lateral of a move. I would argue Cam Johnson's even more effective than Michael Porter Jr., but you save a lot of money by making that trade to get Michael Porter to the Nets and bringing Cam Johnson in. Cam Johnson, super consistent, terrific shooter. We know Cam Johnson, so kind of arguably an upgrade over Michael Porter Jr., or at least a very similar type of player to Michael Porter Jr. You get Bruce Brown back, your 3-and-D sixth man from the title run 2 years ago. And then what's another thing that the Nuggets lacked? They lacked a backup center that could actually give you serviceable minutes and production. They go get Jonas Valanciunas, one of the best role-playing kind of backup big guys you can get out there. A guy in those 10, 12 minutes Jokic won't play, he could get you 10 points and 8, 10 rebounds. So Valanciunas is a huge addition to the team, and they get a streaky player, but a player that could have a game that he puts the team on his back, and a difference-making player in Tim Hardaway Jr. You get a terrific shooter, streaky, but he can have those games. And that's the type of guy, if he's part of your rotation, if he's kind of your 8th, 9th, 10th man, that there's really not a huge risk to it. You know, he could be a lot, there could be a lot of rewards from having Tim Hardaway Jr. as part of your rotation in the role that he's in now with the Nuggets. So I just love all 4 of those additions. I think it takes the Nuggets from being a team that's a contender just because of Jokic to a team that now is a contender because they all around have a contending squad and a contender level depth. I would say the Nuggets, because of this offseason going into next year, are my second best team in the West after the Thunder. I really think this offseason they've had has put them at that level. And at the end of the day, just with Jokic and just with the team they had with Aaron Gordon, Jamal Murray, and Michael Porter Jr., they took the OKC to 7 games, right? So, and then you add all these players that you did. I think that's a huge difference for the Nuggets. So now the Nuggets, I think, are back to that 2023 level team, the fearful team that could win it all just because of this offseason. And also, they did lose Dario Saric. I like Dario Saric, but, you know, not a significant move when you bring in the guys that they brought in. So the Denver Nuggets, I think, so far have won this NBA offseason. So guys, like I said, comment your opinions. Let me know your top 5 NBA offseasons. Who's had the best offseasons? Hey, who's had some of the worst offseasons? Maybe we make a future video with that as well. So guys, at the end of the day, it's just great to be back after a 10-month break. It won't be 10 months till the next video. It's been way too long of a break. I'm gonna get back on track and create consistent content for you guys. I love doing it. So we will be back, guys. So that's gonna bring us to the end of the video for today. Make sure to comment your opinions, like the video if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you love the NBA, love the NFL, love college football, college basketball, MLB baseball. We talk about all those sports here and then some. So make sure to subscribe if you like the content you're seeing. That'd be much appreciated. So guys, that's gonna bring us to the end. Thank you so much for watching this video. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you all in the next one.